So now let's talk about how we use video and or podcasts to market our business. So the assumption is we've created a strategy and we've produced some content. So now we have a batch of content. And so the first question is, how do we want to syndicate, meaning release that content to our market? So you've got kind of two options here. You can dump all the content in one go, or you can syndicate it over a period of time. Now, our general advice to any business would be that you syndicate content, and I'll talk about that for most of this video. But let me just address the first idea first. So if you think about a series on Netflix, a series that's done really well, what they will tend to do is release the entire series in one go, as opposed to have it as a show where it's released on a weekly basis that you might see on a terrestrial television channel if you're in the UK, like ITV or BBC or something. Netflix will dump an entire series in one go because it knows that fans of that series are going to binge on the content and have an all-night session watching potentially all of the episodes in a series. And that type of engagement with an audience is attractive to the platform provider because it means that the audience is very, very, very engaged in what's going on. Now, if you're producing a podcast or a video series and putting it onto a channel like iTunes, for example, or possibly YouTube, and you've got that really strong connection with your audience, there might be benefits in doing something like that, not least because the platforms themselves will pick up the signals of very, very heavy engagement from a targeted group of audience and will promote that content to the top of the recommended lists. So that's a very specific reason why you might dump all the content in one go. Now, for most businesses that are producing content in order to engage audiences as a part of an always-on awareness campaign, it would make much more sense to syndicate content on a weekly or a fortnightly or potentially a daily basis. So it's obviously a function of how much content you have and or your capability to create more content. Now, the reason for syndicating it on a daily or weekly or fortnightly basis is kind of obvious, really. It's we always want to be in place to connect with either new customers that have become aware of our brand or existing customers that are finding value in our content and are interested in the next iterations or versions of content that we're creating. And so by releasing content periodically, we're able to stimulate that always-on engagement, which is like touch points, if you like, with a customer that will help them become comfortable with us as a brand to the point at which hopefully they can engage us for our products and or services. So once we've covered how we want to syndicate our content, we next need to think about what channels we're going to place it on. Now, if we're a podcast, obviously there's all the main ones. There's Google Podcasts, there's iTunes, there's Spotify and many more. And really, if you're creating a podcast, it makes sense to get them on all of those channels. Different podcast listeners will have podcast platforms that they favor, and it makes sense to be able to connect with potentially all of those audience groups. If we're talking about video, here at MintTwist, we would say look at YouTube as the home, as the hub for your content. Now, some people might use Vimeo, and we've got nothing against Vimeo, that's a great place to be, but if there's not a good reason not to use YouTube, from a digital marketing perspective, we would say use YouTube. And the simple reason for that is that you will get an SEO benefit by sitting your content on YouTube and obviously appropriately marking it up with the right tags, the right description, the right title, the right thumbnail, and so on and so forth. And so if we think about YouTube as the hub, as the home for our content, we then need to think about where are we going to place that content so that we can reach our audiences? Because remember, many brands out there don't have an audience on YouTube. So we're not saying go on YouTube because you'll connect with thousands or millions of people. We're saying go on YouTube because it makes sense to be a good home for your content. It may be, if you're a B2B business, that you have a much larger audience on LinkedIn. So if that's the case, you would want to repurpose that piece of video and upload it as a native piece of content and place it on the LinkedIn channel. If the piece of content is a longer form piece of content, meaning it's more than 3 minutes, it might make sense to create a teaser video that you place on LinkedIn, which is going to be 30 seconds or so, that then in the comments links to the YouTube video, the main video. So you're engaging customers that are on your LinkedIn platform with a small amount of that content, and you're saying to them, look, if you want to see the full video, please click on this link and learn more. And really, it's exactly the same guidance for if you're wanting to use the content on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever platform you want. And what we would say at MintTwist is whatever platforms your audience is on, it makes sense to present your content to those audiences. Now, the final piece of the puzzle is if you're a brand that's already making use of advertising, so if you're doing digital advertising on Instagram, Facebook, Google, or whichever platform, you can also think about utilising your content to extend the reach and engagement that you're getting through your advertising campaigns.